fail fast. Why fail fast? Because failure provides the opportunity to learn and course correct. So if something is going to fail, right, it better happen fast. It better happen as soon as possible so that you can recover from it and you can course correct. Failure provides an opportunity to learn unless you try something new, right? You cannot innovate. And when you try something new, there is always risk of it not working out, but that does not mean that there's something gone seriously wrong there. Right? So fear of failure is a classic symptom of an organization having a problem with the mindset of actually being agile. Agile says, embrace change. Right? Agile is all about responding to change. Agile is all about welcoming requirements even late in the development process. Now what happens when you resist change in your mind? A, you are sending wrong signals to the customer, right? You just say, I have all these requirements, now why is the customer coming in, asking for something here? There's a problem there. You may be happy with the way you're doing things with status quo. What does that mean? It leaves no room for continuous improvement. Okay? So there is a problem in keeping an open mind about change. If you're happy with status quo, if you're just happy with working with a fixed scope and not wanting to relook at things as you move along, that is not a good sign in terms of agile adoption and transformation. Right? For me, intrinsic motivation is important from the point of view of achieving excellence. My definition of excellence has two components. One is skill. You need to be good at what you want to do or what you're doing. And the other is passion. And passion comes, which means that you really enjoy what you do and you really want to do something very well. Passion comes from intrinsically motivated. So from that perspective, intrinsic motivation is important. And this again is a function of a lot of things. It's a function of how people are hungry to learn. It's a function of people being open-minded to new ideas. There's a bunch of things which go into intrinsic motivation. But I think this is an important factor which you need to look at when you're seeing whether your organization. I'm given a piece of work to do. I have to develop something. I have to write code. I have to test something. That's all that I will do. And I will not worry about risk issues and concerns. That's not my job. Clearly, that's a bad skill. In Agile, right, the team or the people on the ground are supposed to be most powerful because they are closest to the context. Who knows the risks, issues and concerns that something can go wrong better than the team, right? And if the team is not willing to call those out, there is a problem. There may be multiple reasons why people may not want to do it, but the point is that if they are not doing it, that's an issue. I think the other point is that by the time risk issues and concerns, if you leave it to the senior management, they notice it. By the time those get called out, it might be just too late. Okay? Because information, it will take time to filter out, if at all it filters out in the first place. So the other advantage of having a team, very approach and the traditional approach is that traditional approaches are very task-oriented, right? I have done development, right? The project is 50% done or 75% done, right? That's a task you've done and you measure completion by task done. Whereas Agile believes in value, right? Value delivered to the customer. So task completion, in that sense, is not a true measure of success. And if the team or the organization is still using task completion as a measure of success, then that's a problem. The other issue with this approach is that it creates silos. It says, oh yes, development is done, so I'm done with my job. I don't have to worry about anything else. right? Let the testers do their thing. I'm done with my work, so I'm happy. Can you afford to say something like that? Until something is delivered to the customer and the customer says, yes, I'm happy with this. So, you need to move from task orientation to value orientation. And if the team or the organization has not done that, right, there is a problem. The team is always seeking directions. Sure, there will be times when you would need to work more, but that cannot be sustainable. Close-mindedness, which means that you are not open to fresh ideas, you are not open to relooking at things. This is in some ways similar to resistance to change, but in some ways it is different as well, and that's why I have brought this point out here again. Why is it different? So the point is that in many organizations it is one or two senior people who decide, what to do next, what is the direction that we need to take, what are the new ideas that need to come in, and everybody else is just expected to follow that. That leads to close-mindedness. That just says, even if I think of something, the organization is never going to listen to me, right? So why should I even worry about it? And that's the problem. You close your mind from thinking and expressing yourself, or thinking something new and talking about it. That's the problem. The point here is, again, one person, but there may be 3, 4, 5, 7 people thinking about it, talking about it, and deciding what best to do next. Then that's good, because it de-risks a lot of things, because the whole team has thought about it. It's not just one person who's thinking about something and deciding on something. And the other point is that you get a variety of ideas, you get fresh ideas, and this assumes that everybody in the team is equal. So why is somebody's opinion who's joined fresh out of college important? Because if that person is fit enough to join the organization and be considered as part of the team, why can't that person bring in fresh ideas? Why can't that person challenge status quo? And why can't his or her ideas be looked at or considered? The key is not to become attached to your ideas. Always keep an open mind. Look at the pros and cons. Debate it out, right? And either say, I convince you, or you convince me. Logically, without getting personal, without getting emotional. The key is not to feel bad if your idea is not accepted, right? It means you contributed, people spoke about it, but if the team felt that some other idea is better, yes, that's better for the team. Let's go with it. So I think if this kind of a mindset is not there within the team, to take a back seat when the team says, hey, your idea was good. This is glorifying individuals is another practice which traditional organizations have followed. Clearly the intent is not wrong. The intent is to motivate people. So people who have excelled, people who have done well, the organization, the management wants to reward them, recognize them. But think about this, folks. If the glorification is coming from somebody outside the team, right? What does it do? So for example, let us assume that I'm part of a team and there was some crisis and I worked hard to overcome that. I stayed 8 nights, I somehow saw that the problem was resolved. And the management recognizes them and they say, hey Sunil, you've done a great job, man. How do you think the others in the team will feel? And done by the management is not a good sign. It leads to a lot of antipathies. Yes, special individual efforts need to be recognized, but the trick is to have the team itself recognize that individual. So if my team says, hey Sunil, you've done well, right, we want to recognize you, that kind of glorification is acceptable because the team is doing it. But if the management is doing it, there is a problem. Everybody understands what cross-functional means? Cross-functional means that all the roles which are necessary for the team to be self-sufficient and independent are there in that team. I have seen many organizations which say, hey,
we want to adopt Agile only up to development. Our testers will not be part of this Agile adoption or transformation journey. They are separate, they don't want to be influenced by what the development team is doing. They are the user stories, developers and testers, you go and develop it, right? The business person is not going to be available to you, or he'll be available or she'll be able to you only on phone calls or only at certain periods of time. How good is that? So a cross-functional team means a team which is self-sufficient, which includes, most importantly, the customer or the business representation in the team. I think if that is missing, as much as you may want to say that you are practicing Agile, and you're saying you're doing all the standards and the retros and everything else, it's not going to give you the results. So it's very important to ensure that the team has the appropriate roles in the right ratios and is co-located to the extent possible, or at least there are communication channels which are open throughout. No levers to negotiate. Let me explain. As I said before, Agile is all about, or one of the key tenets of Agile is adaptive planning, right? Why adaptive planning? Because when you prepare a plan, there is no way you can know all the variables which are going to come in play as you move forward. Whatever approach you may follow Agile, you may follow waterfall, you may follow whatever. But when you prepare a plan, it's good only for what is best known at that moment in time. Right? And what happens when you move forward? You discover something, you find out that whatever you estimated is much bigger than what you thought, and you need to replan. And what are the key elements of replanning? The triangle, the classic triangle, which has three parts to it, right? Scope, time, and cost/capacity. Now, if there is a team which has been told that your scope is fixed, right, which is fixed for that moment in time, and it is safe to assume that the customer is going to come back and say that something is going to change or something is going to get added. So scope is fixed, you're told. Time is fixed, you have to deliver this within this period of time. And this is all the number of people that you want to have in the team, no more. If this is the case, how can you practice agility? If all these three levers are fixed, there is no way a team can practice agility. A team needs to have the ability to negotiate a few things with the customer, right? Or with its senior leadership. So if you discover something new, you have to deal with it. If you discover an estimate which has suddenly grown big, or you discover something which is a technological challenge and you need to do a spike and spend some time to resolve that, something has to give in. Right? Either you need to add people, or you need to increase the time, or you tell the customer, can you deprioritize something? Can we look at picking something up? If this requirement has come in now and it's more important, can we look at something else which we can deliver later? Or maybe cut it out? Unless your team is empowered to do that. Location which is different from where most of the team is. Your business analysts perhaps are also there. And the mindset is to just feed in, only information which is necessary to do the development or so-called development is what they think. If you do not give your team a big picture view, right, the sense of purpose which the team will have will be very minimal. People will be looking at only small components or just fragmented pieces of work. And in terms of challenging status quo, in terms of thinking about new ideas, in terms of innovation, in terms of sense of belonging, I think that's not a good sign. Right? So the whole team needs to understand why this project is critical for the business, for the customer, why it is so important. Right? What are the levers that the customer is looking at? How is it going to make a difference to the customer's business? I think that is very, very important for the team to understand and internalize. If you do that, you will see the difference in the team's behavior, because the team will get motivated to really work on things which make a difference to the customer. Before I move to the enablers, Any thoughts on any of these? Any more strengths which you might have come across within your organizations? Let me ask you this question. How many of you have been practicing Agile for over a year? Anyone here? I have a very distinguished expert here as part of our audience, and I'm very honored that he's here, Adrian Lander, who's one of the speakers of this conference. Any thoughts, Adrian? Any antibiotic, any smell which comes to my mind, your mind, which I have not covered?
Trying to fix a job before they understand.
Yeah. Well said. I think Agile is a continuous journey, right? And it's a process which is a never-ending process. It's not about saying yes, we have done this, so yeah, we are Agile and we stop there. I think that's it. You're causing a downfall just from that moment onwards, actually. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think I'm keeping good on time here. We'll look at some enablers which organizations can put in place.
And celebration does not mean that you always end up, going out, spending money and going out for drinks and dinner. No, not necessarily. Okay. Celebration can mean just as small as a round of applause or claps, right? So, just to give you a small example of celebration, I know an organization where once a story moved to done, right, on the wall, everybody in the team clapped. That's celebrating success at the most smallest level. And that's what we mean by celebrating success. So remember that Agile adoption transformation, actually practicing agility is not as easy as it seems. My own belief is that Agile is very easy to understand, but very difficult to implement, or very difficult to practice. And therefore in this journey, in this difficult journey, right? You have successes, you recognize those and you celebrate those. It just motivates the team, the people, the organization even better to do well. And again, in the spirit of agility, what is important is that you not only recognize what's not working, but you recognize what's working well and try to improve on that, try to do that more of. And therefore, it is important to recognize that and celebrate. This is a classic thing which many organizations do. Actually, I could have bought it as a bad smell as well in terms of not following the right metrics. Okay. So, just to give you one example of a wrong metric, which is very commonly seen in many organizations. I have seen most organizations measure the efficiency or the performance of a tester by the number of bugs or defects he or she finds. I hear a lot of laughs here, yeah? A lot of people smiling, a lot of people nodding, right? Now, you tell me, how good is that metric in terms of creating that one team feeling? I am a tester, right? My boss is telling me the more number of defects you find, Sunil, the more bonus you're going to get or the more pay you're going to get. Now, if I am in that state of mind, and a developer who's sitting next to me comes and says, hey Sunil, I have developed this user story. Before I check it in, can you please come and have a look at it on my machine and tell me, broadly whether it's looking alright? What am I thinking at that point in time? If I do that, right? If I point out something wrong even before it is checked in, how am I going to find defects? Why should I cooperate with it? Let him check it in. Let me find out more defects. Let me log those defects in whatever system. And yes, then I'm a hero. God. Think about it, guys. Think about it. Metrics play a very powerful role in influencing people's behavior. Very, very powerful. I work with organizations in change management because Agile mindset requires a lot of change management to come in. And the most powerful or critical element which I have found in influencing change is introducing the right metrics. people behave according to how they are measured by. If you measure something wrong, people will behave in that way. Because for them that is success. What should be the measure of success here? The measure of success here should be bug-free code or customer being. Create a safe environment. Safe environment is where people are not afraid to call out what's not working. In many organizations, right, which are not truly agile in their mindset, if somebody calls out what's not working, either that person is blamed, that you are the cause of the problem, or that person is given the responsibility saying, alright, you pointed out, now you go and fix it. So next time I will not call it out, because if I call out something, it's landing in my lap. It is very important for the organization to have a safe environment where people can express themselves openly, people can call out anti-patterns. This is very, very important for de-risking things from the point of view of continuous improvement, from the point of view of people taking ownership to take things forward, right? And not just leaving all of this to the senior management. People say, yes, whatever you want to say about the problem. That's not a good enabler for working in a distributed way. I know some organizations where if you need a packet of stickies or index cards to write stories, it can take up to 3 weeks for that packet to come in. Why? Because you put a requisition, purchase requisition, it will go to the purchase department, they will put an order to the vendor will deliver it to the stores will make an entry, they will then send it to you. How good is that? We need to cut through all this bureaucracy, right? We need to cut through things which are not adding value and which are slowing the team down. We need to look at policies which trust people. For example, in ThoughtWorks, we do not monitor the amount of time somebody is spending at work, because it is assumed that the team knows what that person is doing, and if that person is not performing, the team will give that person the feedback. We don't need unnecessary policing. So we need to look at such policies to come in if you really want people to become agile in their own minds. People who are believers, people who are torch bearers, and when people on the ground see that somebody among themselves is succeeding and can be looked at as a role model, they will be more amenable to changing their mind. And therefore it is important to groom those torch bearers at the ground level so that they can then start influencing the other people who are slow, right? Or in the agile adoption journey. That's it, folks. For the lack of time, I will stop here and I have to limit my presentation to this. There's a lot more that I can speak about, but I'm available in the same iteration itself. Right? There are many organizations where testers are, and again this is again a broader function of a lot of things, but if the testers are one iteration behind, then that's again not a good sign from a testing perspective. But clearly, I think metrics which are isolated according to a given role and for a set of people are, in my view, by definition, not appropriate. I think the metrics have to be measured more at the team level. So it's all about your velocity. It's all about your customer feeling happy with the quality of code delivered. I think that should be more the criteria than and again those things about collaboration, new ideas, making sure that you're keeping up with the development. I think those are the things that you need to look at when you're looking at specifically from a testing point of view. But I would not have any hard and specific metrics for testers, at least from my perspective, with respect to the adoption. Yes, please.
Maybe the follow-up question. Actually, could you mind carry?
No, that's fine. Okay. So I think in ThoughtWorks, the main metric is customer satisfaction, right? I think that really is the key. And the way we do our evaluation of people, I mean, if you're referring to that, is how do you evaluate somebody's performance, right?
It's all about the team giving feedback to that individual. Okay? So if you're a 10-15 people team, the opinion of other 8, 9, 10 members is what that matters in terms of really giving feedback to that person in terms of how he or she is doing. And I think if there are issues, if that person has slacked, if that person is incompetent, all of those things will come out as part of that feedback, because the team works basically so closely, and the project manager or the iteration manager or the scrum masters feedback has only as much weight as any other member of that team, right? So I think your question was more from a performance evaluation perspective, then yes, it is clearly feedback from peers, I think, and obviously feedback from customer and customer satisfaction. These are the two primary metrics that we use. So, anything else? Any other questions? People are getting shy. All right. I think many people may want to talk one-to-one, and I'm more than happy to do that.
Sunil, a
Yes,
question. Yes. So in terms of the metrics, I guess whatever they are, or whether it's customer satisfaction, how do you motivate your team, right? And how does HR get involved in all this?
I think that's a far bigger issue. I don't think I'll be able to do justice to it within a minute or two, but I'm happy to have an offline conversation. I think it starts from recruiting the right people. Okay, it has to begin there. So ThoughtWorks, and I think really, those kind of things are the key. And HR basically only acts as an enabler rather than an enforcer or a policing type of a person. To just enable that person to perform at his or her best, right? It's about what kind of policies you have. It's about the particular level you are forced to become a manager. Okay. Here it is not like that. So there's a bunch of things that you can do from an HR perspective, but those are very fundamental to your organization's strategy, your policy, and your vision, and it has to be done there. If you have something tactical, that's not going to work. And as I said, it starts from recruiting, it starts with the hierarchy that you have, it starts with the roles and responsibilities that you have, it starts with the feedback systems that you have. All those things come into play. Anybody from that side? No questions from that side at all? Why is only this side speaking? No? Alright, if there are no more questions, then we close this session here. And as I said, feel free to interact with me one-to-one, whenever you like. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Four things, as what my instructor taught me. So it says, if you want to remember Scrum, just remember 3, 3, 5, 5. So I may get this wrong because I can't see my notes on my laptop. So if I'm wrong, those of you Scrummers out there, just correct me. So Scrum has 3 artifacts. It has a product backlog, a sprint backlog, and a way to measure. Is that right? A way to measure, like a passport or a green chart. Right. Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We do the increment also in the architect.
Okay. So a product backlog is basically the entire release requirements or the product requirements for your product. So that's kind of everything, every little idea will be in a product backlog. The sprint backlog is whatever you're trying to complete or commit to just for that time box. In this case, it's 1 to 4 weeks typically. And of course, you would need a way to measure progress. So this could be a burn-down chart, burn-up chart, passport. I think the latest one that just doesn't really say what to use. It's just you need a way to measure progress. There are 3 roles. There's a product owner, and the product owner defines what is custom for make releases, or we would look into a little bit more detail and break things down so that we can really accept it and work on it. The third ceremony is the daily stand-up. So that's probably the most familiar, where you stand up as a team for no more 15 minutes a day and decide. And basically answer the 3 questions. What I have done yesterday, what I will do today, and are there any impediments? The last two ceremonies is at the end of the iteration, and for me, I usually start off with a demo. So I'll demo whatever product improvement has been accomplished in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks to the product owner, the team, and any stakeholders that may want to be there. And the last one, and I feel it's kind of the most important, is the retrospective. And that's really just deciding on what went well, what we should stop doing, and what can we do. So that's really awesome. And the last one is, of course, the 5 values of openness, courage, respect. Okay, who knows the last two? Openness, courage, respect. Respect each other. We have to be courageous and speak our mind. We have to be open in really sharing. Right? We have to have the courage to change. So that is really Scrum in a nutshell. And I've been doing Scrum for about 5 years now. And what really started me on the path to Kanban was my current team, which I've run for a year, we basically got stuck. Our retrospectives got stale. It was the same things happening over and over again. It just felt that we were at a performance plateau. We were not getting any better. We still were not as good as we think we could be, but we could just not push that on. And as manager, I was looking at the team and deciding and trying to understand what was going to happen. So I'm just kind of curious here, of your development teams, who has the same exact roles in the company? You had a developer, and you had a tester, and you had like a business analyst, a product owner. You just have a show of hands. Do everything, like test and develop and do requirements. Okay, so I didn't have that, and I was trying to figure out how to break that down. So a lot of my thinking was influenced by theory of constraints and lean, and I was looking at that, and I looked at this Kanban thing. So Kanban is very simple. It's really only 3 steps. It's even simpler than Scrum. So to visualize it, you can imagine work like a funnel, right? Where you have inputs coming in on one end, right? So this would be your requirements, your specifications, whatever. And through a process, whatever you may use, you will get something out of it, working software, documentation, whatever it is. But one of the fallacies of a planned kind of a methodology like waterfall is we make this assumption that we can estimate everything up front that is accurate. We can have the right number of people with the right number of mix in the team, and somehow magically everything will be met. Right? If that was true, then no projects would be late, and there would be no failed projects. But I have personally been on more failed projects than successful projects. Because there is a bottleneck. There's always a bottleneck. So imagine, if you would, you have a perfect ratio of a team. So you have, say, 5 developers and 3 testers, whatever management thinks is correct. And all of a sudden, someone gets married, has a baby, takes a vacation, leaves the company, decides to Facebook the whole day because I don't feel like working because I hate my team, I hate my manager. Whatever reason, I mean, we're human, we're not perfect, we're not robots. Right? That only works if you're all robots. So there's always this constraint. And what makes it difficult for software, as opposed to say manufacturing, is this constraint moves around. It always shifts, is very high, it doesn't stay in the same place. Right? Different skill levels, different people, rotations, whatever it is. Right? Life goes on, and there will always be this bottleneck. So as long as there's a bottleneck, work will be constrained. It will not go faster than that bottleneck. So for my case, a lot of it was in testing. A developer would say, I'm done. Right? Okay, a quick question here. Who here has the definition of done and the definition of done? Okay, your laughter kind of tells me that you have that. So I had the same problem. I'm done. Okay, is it in the build? I checked it in. Is it done? Oh yeah, it's in the build and it's tested. Is there any open defects? Right? Yeah, it's tested. Did the product owner take a look at it? So we had all these various definitions of done. And one thing I found, that done is a very dangerous word. Very dangerous. Because it doesn't matter who says done or what your definition is, as long as my product manager hears done, he thinks it's shippable. Checked in, done, shippable. Oh, I just told my customer we can have it next week. Oh crap. And we're all rushing. So that was very dangerous. So Kanban, really, the other thing about Kanban is actually all around us. I noticed in Bangkok, like Toyota is probably your national car. And if you ever go and service your car at a workstation, you'll see a Kanban board with cards representing your car. It just goes through different stations. I saw some people here drinking Starbucks this morning. A Starbucks cup has a Kanban on it, right? Does anybody have a Starbucks here by any chance? Right. The next time you go, you look at the cart, you see little boxes on the side. That's a Kanban. The cup moves through the system. If you go to a cinema, like watch a movie, you are the Kanban. I mean, you are the product. You queue up at the line, you wait to be served, you buy your ticket, you take the ticket, you go and watch it and sit down, you're being served, and then you exit. So you are moving through the system. So in software, what moves through the system is requirements. You're transforming requirements, doing some stuff to it, and getting working software out the other end, working shippable software. So typically, what I would do if I had more time is I would visualize and show you how Kanban works. And I use a paper airplane exercise. But since I don't have the time, I'll just kind of have to walk through you. So what the exercise is that the first run would be a push run. And this is a very typical waterfall way, or I would even say, so let me say that again. So I was working for a very large American company. We were rebuilding their the e-commerce site. The company is rhymes with hell. Yeah, that's right. And one of the things that was happening was it was using Scrum in an SLDC process, which is very much planned waterfall process. And I would get requirements from product management, and they would have a number with it. They would have an estimate. And nobody would ask the development team on what the estimate is because some manager made the estimate. So I'm just curious, how many people have been in that position or is in that position right now, where you don't actually estimate directly your requirements? Hold up. And what happens when you run this exercise is that person at that station starts to get very excited. And he starts moving a little bit faster because he sees these piles of paper airplanes like stacked up next to him, and he starts doing a little bit faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster. So when someone says, "Can you do it?" what's the typical answer? "I'll try. I'll do my best." And that's not wrong. You know, we do try our best. But what happens is you get unhappy, and even worse, quality suffers. Bugs happen. And basically, I have paper airplanes that don't fly, or they don't meet the specification, and they get filled by QA testers. So this is the first run for the paper airplane exercise. Now with the Kanban way, it introduces a very simple concept of having a Kanban. So a Kanban is just intermediate steps between stations. And you can imagine it as like a bin, and you put a limit on that bin. So if I were to make a fall on a paper airplane, you would actually have people kind of idling. And it's very weird for managers to see people not doing any work. Okay. And what happens is, paper will flow through, and you'll go through the whip boxes, and it would get stuck at the bottleneck. What would happen then is the next paper airplane will come about, and it can't go in the box because it's full, so you have to wait. Pretty simple, but it's kind of counterintuitive. So why does Kanban work then? Right. So typically, when I run this a couple of times now with my own teams, this is the kind of metrics we'll get with cycle time. So for 20 airplanes, it takes about 8 minutes and 40 seconds to build 20 airplanes, so that's about 26 seconds per airplane. With Kanban, it takes a little bit longer, maybe like 9 minutes 15. So on the face of it, it takes longer to make a paper do its best. Get a lot of quality errors, get a lot of defects. And the worst case I ever got with 20 airplanes was only 3 passed. Either the folds were wrong, they had drawn a little star, it was off, or it was creased. But typically it's about a little bit more than half. So in this case, maybe 7 in that case. It tells a very different story. So in this case, if 7 fail, it takes 40 seconds to make one good airplane. With Kanban, because of the lower defect rate, it takes 30 seconds. So not only does it take less time to build a shippable airplane, it gets a more accessible airplane. There's less excitement, there's less drama, things just kind of work. So why does that work? Right? And one key one with Kanban is that it's really push and pull. A lot of my experience has the challenge with working in young teams is trying to figure out velocity. Right? I know in Scrum we're supposed to figure out what is our velocity, what is our sustainable pace. And a lot of time it kind of either swings back and forth or it's really hard to kind of get that one number. Because of pressure. When I was running my team in the beginning, we would have a sustainable pace in the beginning. We'll say, okay, we can go about 35 points a sprint. It creates the bottleneck, the big pile of airplanes, and what happens is sometimes we end up having a disastrous release. We had a defect that shouldn't be there. We shipped with software that couldn't even install at the customer site. And it gets really embarrassing. So with the pull, is the team basically will say, this is how much I can do, this is how much I can do, this is how much I can do. And you just pull that continuously. So that gives you that kind of more stable view of velocity over a longer period of time. The other one is really coming from lean, where inventory is raised. So if I am, a paper plane company, and let's say this is 100 baht to, raw material, if I have a big stack of paper airplanes, like say 8 of them, is that of any value to a customer if it's half done? Right? Can I sell that? Can I get revenue from that? Right? It's basically worthless until it's a finished product. That was we've developed it, we checked it in, it's in the bill, it's tested, but it hasn't been looked at by a product owner. It's still not shippable. I can't make any money from that. So having low inventory makes it much more efficient in terms of use of raw material or resources. Right? Like the hose, if there's a constraint, it doesn't matter what I do after that bottleneck, it's not going to make it go faster. We had lots of development would make lots of assumptions that were wrong. And really where the constraint was in this case was we needed more product owners, or we needed more capable business analysts. Right? To tell development exactly what it is that we need to do rather than guessing everything. In my most recent case, one team kind of says, yeah, I'm working 60-hour weeks, I'm working really hard, we created 100,000 lines of code in the last month. But what if you're not building the right thing? Or you're not writing the right kind of code? One of the field projects I was in was led by a so-called architect, and he made, let's say, a fundamentally wrong technical decision. We were supposed to create a module as an extension of an enterprise application, and he decided to use a different kind of database, which didn't use the core technology, which had semantic search. So we did a lot of work. And then at the end of 3 months, we showed it to the technical director, and she basically said, no, this is wrong, completely wrong. Well, we did a lot of work. We spent a lot of hours at work, we wrote a lot of code, but she basically said this was the wrong direction. Could be wrong, having the wrong people with the wrong values on the team, it could be poor requirements. A lot of times with my kind of situation is I work in a distributed team. There's a lot of waste associated with working remotely. There's time differences, there's communication problems, there's what I call email ping pong. I said, someone said, oh, I need information, I already sent email. I think I'm done. I'm just waiting for a response. Pick up the phone, use messaging, right? Or just, if the person's in the same office, just walk and talk to that person. So all these little things make a big difference, and it helps you kind of identify and manage those constraints. So you may want to think of yourself, okay, I want to give this Kanban thing a try. So how will you do it? First one is set up a task board. So if you're doing Scrum, you should already have a task board. Right? But we'll make some tweaks to it later. The other one is you have to define your work step. A typical Kanban, a simple Kanban will basically have just 3 steps to do, doing, and done. But for my case, where our team members have a little bit more specialization in terms of a product owner, a developer, a tester, we set up additional kind of work steps. Create a Kanban before each work steps, right? And then basically have we call a work in progress, inspecting them. So why that may be the case? Because as I said, our Agile adoption is not mature enough. So the other one is, like Sunil said earlier, management fear of change. Things are sort of working, we were doing a lot better than the past, but we're not really there yet, so we don't want to change too many things. And the other one, and this is really why I did Scrum one, was I could hide it. Sorry. And because it's working within the framework of Scrum. So to show you my Scrum board, this is the one that myself and my team came up with. We're using Rally, and basically we've expanded the task board to include the whip limits and additional work steps. So this is what it looks like. It's not legible, but this is kind of what it is. So it has evolved over time. This board was created by myself and the team, and we've kind of decided the limits between ourselves. So when we started, we didn't have the first column, the block column. We actually had it all the way in there. And we found out that a lot of times we were blocked by other teams, and we would forget. That's why we created the block column and moved out to the left. So when we start our daily stand-up, the first thing we look at is, what are we blocked on? Why are we still blocked? Are we doing anything to unblock it? Then the next one is to prioritize backlog. I put in the word prioritize there to remind ourselves that we have to prioritize things in that column. A lot of times when we put things in the backlog, we assume it's prioritized, but it's not. But throughout the sprint, it would change. And we wouldn't know what's important anymore. Now the next one is separate. So what was really interesting for us is really the whip limits, and that is the number within that parentheses. So for my development team, we have 9 developers and 2 testers. And over time, we found that a lot of the work was stuck in testing. There was a lot of stuff in ready for test, more than enough work for the testers. So I could be a manager and just say, hey, you guys should go and work harder. Hey, stay away longer and finish all the testing. But what kind of evolved over time was that the developers would offer to execute test cases. 2 years ago, that probably would never happen. Like developers were just coders and testers were testers. But because we were as a team for a good period of time, we didn't want to let each other down. And I like to have a discussion. So some of the things they said was, well, if we see a tester really busy and not being able to complete all the testing before the end of the sprint, and if a developer is idle, why shouldn't I help that person execute some test cases? Right? Because that is the most valuable thing to do at that moment in time, to not have that pile of inventory stacked up that prevents software from being shipped over. And other cases where a tester, we have one case where the requirements were very vague, and it was basically churning in development. A developer thought he knew what it was, he moved in the development stage, and he found out that it wasn't really workable. But the testers had a lot of knowledge in the system level because they spent a lot of time testing and looking at all these different systems. And they basically helped out the developers in trying to understand things at a higher level. So we had a lot of this cross-collaboration between developers doing testers actually helping out in development. We do pair programming, and some of the developers even pair with the testers. Right? The tester may not be able to write code, but definitely you can read code. Or I can talk about, well, I think I'm going to do this, and I think I'm going to do this. And the tester would say, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So this is, for me as a manager, one of the steps for me to get a truly cross-functional team or even cross-functional members. And recently in this project of ours, we were introducing test automation, and the two developers are asking me, I want to learn how to code because I want to write test cases. I want to automate test cases. And the developers asking me, well, can we have a knowledge sharing session on test methodology? Right? How do I write the test cases? How do I do binary testing? How do I do black box testing? So this is, for me, the true value of Kanban is facilitating those discussions on how do we maximize our value creation? How do we manage those constraints? How do we just produce lots of great working software? So, as part of personal reflection for me, and kind of what I've learned with doing Scrum for the last 6 months, is how you set up the Kanban and the WIP limits really represent the culture and the values of the team. So why we have like in development and in testing is because management made that decision to have specialization. Developers, testers. And I can't really do anything about that. But where the WIP limit comes in is that our values are really on helping each other. Right? It's not coders versus QA testers anymore. It's really, we're both part of the same team trying to create lots of good software. The other thing for me personally is I've stopped looking at the burn down chart. I don't look at it anymore. I don't look at hours anymore. I look at what is a burn up chart or cumulative flow. So in this case, this is not the best example. It's just from our previous sprint. That green part at the bottom, that is points accepted. Yes, there's still a gap where blue is basically tested pending acceptance. And why we have a big gap between the blue and the green is because my PO was in Las Vegas on vacation. It was Thanksgiving. But every Friday, the last Friday of every sprint, we take half a day and we either do a team meeting, we do some exercises, or we just go out and have some fun. Right? We created that time. And the work, and the actual work that we've done over the last 6 months is actually more than the past. So we have done more, created more value, and also more free time for ourselves just to learn and improve ourselves. So, if you don't remember anything that I've talked about in the last 40 minutes, this is the only thing I want you to remember. These 2 books really shaped my thinking around this field, especially the one on the left, the goal. So, it's a 30-year-old book. It's basically written in a story, like a story form about a factory. But it is the foundation for theory of constraints. And theory of constraints ties in things like lean, Kanban, just in time, a lot of these different things in a way that's very easy to understand. Right? So read that book. The other one is the Phoenix Project. So Phoenix Project is a new book. It's based on theory of constraints, but it's done in the IT environment. Okay? So if you want it more specific on IT, just take a look at the Phoenix Project. So one of the things about sort of my evolution for Agile, when I started, I was like, oh, Scrum is the most awesome thing on the planet. And then I realized Scrum is really just a part of it. There's so much more out there. And these 2 books really capture that. So just lastly, I can take any questions. My information is here. If you want to run the exercise, you can write me, I'll send you the instructions. If we have time, we can even do it outside. I just need like 5 volunteers, and you can see it for yourself. And the last one is a plug. I'm part of Agile Malaysia, and that's kind of how I found out about the Agile Turkey School. I kind of told us through that forum. So if you would, you can join us there. We can have fun discussions. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. So let me just take the time. I got 4 minutes, so I can take some questions right now.
There's a team that I'm coaching. Their work is mainly in 2 parts. First part is to be the developers, and the second part, they have to work at support as well. So there will be support requests coming in, and they have to go into those support tickets and get it done. I'm not sure that your team have got a situation like that or not, and how Kanban can help.
Okay, so it's really hard to do 2 things at once. And it's really hard to do customer support and new product development. We actually fixed a problem where the main development team was also focused on doing customer defects, so basically whatever's in the field. I would say the best is you separate into smaller teams. So how big is your team right now?
About 4 developers and 1 tester, something like that. But
Ooh, that's tough.
I have suggested them to try to separate, but it's not possible. So what I suggest them to do Scrum and Kanban. So Scrum for the development tickets, but if there are like SR coming, they have to ship out for Scrum and then do the Kanban.
Right. So in this case, if assuming you had a good delivery process, so if you have continuous integration, you have a build process, get that done. Then what you can do is you can treat defects like any other defects, but you just tag like this is for a specific build, a specific branch, and the person picking that up would just do it, fix it, and then check it in. That's how I would do it. But you need continuous integration and you need a way to do that build.
And another question, as a support, that would be the work like emailing back and forth, right? Send email to ask question and then wait for another day, and then a little information is provided and it's bouncing around. And they try to use Kanban to capture that, but
it's that is a lot of ways. So is it internal or external?
it's internal, but the customer is in another time, so it's
Pick up the phone and call.
it seems that they cannot pick up phone because it's maybe at 2 a.m. in Bangkok and at
Right.
time.
So this is where I feel team leads and managers bring their salary is sometimes, especially in a modern company, you have to wake up at 2 a.m. and call them, or at least early in the morning. It's really something you can't run away from. As a manager, I have a lot of late night calls just to address these problems because I want to make sure my team is kind of fresh in the morning. Yeah. So it's business reality. Probably the test side or the requirement side. So this was to force at least one developer to not do development. Not force, but basically be like if you watch football, like a winger, that guy who basically can run all over the field, basically doing anything. So we basically had one guy playing that role. And in the beginning, it was kind of strange for the developers to think like that. But over time, you realize you learn a lot more just by going around. It makes the job much more interesting. I think you had a second part of the question. The first one was you had a lot of problems with testing, right? Just a piece of advice. The value of being a tester is not testing. The value is test case creation, or test plan creation. And if the test case or the test plan is well written, anybody should be able to execute that. So in this case, testers create test plan, create the test cases, but developers should be able to run it. And that's what happens in my team. Someone's free, we see it backed up, I look at the story, I see the test case, I just run it.
And so, I'm also wondering that you have the problem like there are some developers who are free, don't want to work anything, don't want to work, but this is only 4, okay, all 4 developers are working, but what should I do? Should I work around, should I go to someone, or should I just sit tight?
So I'm being chased out, so just 2 comments. One, as a manager, I think it is my responsibility to make sure the team has the right values. So if this person does not have the right values, I'm going to ask them to go. But that may sound harsh, but usually before I have to do that, and I'm not had to do this before, I'm not had to ask them to go, it's when you're in a daily stand-up and engage, or he'll be the company, either way.
Thank you very much.
Alright, so thank you. So before you go, I have to remind audiences of retro board outside. Okay, so I guess you'll have to rate me if you liked it or not. This is my first time, so I hope you'll be gentle with me. But at the same time, if you feel that I can improve my talk, I would like to do a personal retrospective. Tell me how I've done, how I can improve. So I will thank you for that too. Alright, thank you.
succeed in a certain company or not depends on factors like senior management support, drive, having the right motivation, and company culture. This is another case. I've been at clients where they want to do Agile, but they're mid-level managers who have the silos, so who are managing the architects. We have a pool of architects, or we have a pool of testers, or a pool of web service developers. They're not willing to share their resources. That's a big problem. You can see here, if you're not willing to share your resources, then who is familiar with component teams versus feature teams? Same person. Cool, what? Basically, what you want to do in Agile is you want to be able that features, you can verify the feature, you can see whether it's done within one team. So you don't want unnecessary dependency between teams. However, if the silo managers are not sharing their resources, so I need to go into component teams, then for every feature I need to go to another team or several other teams to verify whether the feature is done. So it's pretty inefficient. So you would say that a company that really wants to do Agile, basically, would top management, the CIO, CEO, would say to their managers, share your resources, change the model. So another, what does Scrum fall? Or what does Scrum fail? So, in a typical enterprise, you've got three parts of the process. You've got the planning process, the budgeting process. Well, this can go on for a long time, I can tell you. Then you've got the game. Yeah, you've got pre-game, post-game. You've got the game, which is the actual software development. And then you've got putting things into release, which can also be quite time-consuming. If you do so-called water Scrum fail, which means you only optimize your development, then yeah, you can win some time. You can go from 12 months of development to 4 months. So I have coached teams from scratch, where basically in 2 months we delivered what the business said normally would take a year. So great. But as you can see, it's still a small part of the optimization you can do. So if you really want to optimize your value stream, if you really want to improve your time to market, at a certain point in time, you need to look beyond software development. And for that, you need senior management support. So if you start optimizing software development with one team, at a certain point in time, you're going to hit bottlenecks. And then you need to look further into the organization. And then probably you'll find out whether the organization really wants to be agile or not. Have a vision. Kotter again, in the same model. It's very important that you have a vision. It can't be just, we're going to do agile. Yeah. So why do you want to do agile? What do you want to achieve? It's not about agile. Agile is it's a mindset, but you do it for a reason. Yeah. You don't do it because it's agile. Yeah. So, which framework are you going to use? Maybe you're going to start with Scrum. Maybe you want to do Scrum Man, or maybe you want to do one of the other frameworks. Yeah. And where do you start? With practices do you start? Do you start just with Scrum? Do you start with Scrum and Extreme Programming? So, you need to have a vision. Well, this is a little bit taken from Scrum Bot. I'm not sure if someone was asking about matrices here before. Jeff Sutherland has a number of matrices. Yeah. Jeff Sutherland, creator of Scrum, or the one who put it on paper, because actually it was created by two Japanese guys. First level of Agile is Agile but. So we do Agile, but we do UATs. Okay. Well, we do Agile, but we sign off our user stories before. These are clear Agile buts. These are the smells that Sunil was talking about. Yeah. Then you got just okay Agile. Yeah. It's just okay. It's Agile, without the buts. But it's more like doing Agile, filling in the boxes. Yeah. Then you got very good Agile. Yeah. It's a bit better than just okay Agile. And then finally you got hyper-productive Agile. Hyper-productive Agile only you get after a while when people have been working together, and they have gone onto the road of self-organization. So they start to improve continuously. The differences are huge. Agile but may have some benefits over waterfall. You got some risk reduction. You got some visibility, higher visibility. You have ability to deal with change a bit more. And, if you're lucky, then you're able to deliver a bit earlier. But the benefits over waterfall, they are sort of constrained. They may not be more than 20–30%. Yeah. If you look at hyper-productive Agile, then we're talking about comparison of maybe 400% plus compared to waterfall. So there is a lot to gain, to stay away from Agile but and to go onto a road towards real hyper-productivity. Actually, research shows that only 10% of teams, they go into hyper-productive Agile. Has to do with their environment, has to do with how much they're empowered, has to do with constraints that the organization puts there. So, don't underestimate change. Yeah? This is one of the causes of failed implementations of Agile. So, it takes 2 to 3 years for most companies to transform successfully to Agile. To such a level that you can really say, the company, for a large part, is Agile. Yeah, they won't go back to waterfall. Yeah? But in a lot of cases, we'll see that companies, after the first success, they think, we can do it. We're Agile already. Yeah? And that's usually where you see it going wrong. So a lot has been invested in Agile because it is major change. But old habits, they come back. This is what I often hear from clients, not every client. I'll be dogging the whole week, so I throw these a little bit of a... We need a template for that. These are the typical, these are voiced in a different way, but these are the typical smells, where you can sort of smell the waterfall culture, or what's still remaining from it. We need to write a guide for that. Heard that as well. Well, we need a tool to calculate velocity. It was a very interesting one. Well, velocity is just, there is a tool to calculate velocity. Who knows the tool to calculate velocity? Sorry? Calculator or your brain, yeah. Velocity is just, adding up, 2 numbers. But when people ask for a tool, they're still in their waterfall mindset. Yeah. People asking for metrics, still, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, you've been doing waterfall, your organization has been doing waterfall, but it's still, a sign that you're still in the waterfall mindset. We need a process for that. Yes, there is a process. It's called Scrum. Or this cannot work here. Yeah? I hear that a lot. Usually I can tell them, actually it works here because I've already done it on 3 projects here, so it does work here. So these are all factors that sort of slow down the enterprise agile transformation. we've always done it like this. And then I ask, you know, yeah, have you been successful in it? So you sort of need, when you're an agile coach and when you're working, you know, with clients and their organization, and you're working with the various levels of their organization, the various departments, etc., the various silos. These are the items basically that should trigger you. Dependencies. We need a project manager, you know. Because the project manager is the only person who can deal with dependencies. You know. We have an intelligent team, but dependencies is something special. So you need a PMP for that. So one person must be responsible. That's always the assumption. You know, because they want to have one person to point fingers at. Or let's do integration testing at the end, because it's more efficient. Goes against the principles will turn into a risk and will turn into an issue. I've seen it many times. That basically we were able to deliver. I was coaching a new team, totally new to Scrum. We were able to speed up software delivery. Yeah. However, every dependency turned into an issue. Infrastructure late, enterprise test environment late, etc., etc. So if you do want to do it successfully, make sure you got champions in various areas. This is coming from Ken Swaber, the other creator of Scrum. We're talking about Scrum. Basically, if you do a project, an agile project, your first agile project in an enterprise, you're basically doing two things. Yeah. On one hand, you're delivering your product, and on the other hand, you start the change of the organization. So every project will run into problems. And some of these problems, they have nothing to do with Agile. They are organizational impediments. And if these impediments are not resolved, for example, that silo managers don't want to share their resources, then every project is going to run into the same impediments. So in order for an Agile transformation to work successfully, you need to address two tracks. One is the track which is focused on delivering your product, and the other track is the track focused on changing the organization. Yeah? Whenever there's an organizational impediment, senior management needs to make a choice. You know, do we want to resolve this or not? Yeah? Make sure you create a quick win. This is often what we do in pilots. Yeah? The mistake sometimes made is that the pilot is a project that doesn't really matter too much. So, and you know, yeah, you can say, yeah, we've done it, you know. But if it doesn't really matter enough, it's not going to convince people. So make sure you take something that matters, but also make sure that it's, you know, that it's a fair challenge, but it's not a combination of all types of challenges you can take. When I did my first Agile project, actually I took it over. It was new technology, it was a new team, it was a new client. There was a lot new. Yeah. So basically, it was too much. Yeah. Too many complications. No stable development infrastructure, etc., etc. So actually, now suddenly I found myself turning around Agile because it wasn't prepared in a proper way. So pick something which does matter, and pick something, you know, with some complexity, but, you know, pick that strategically. Yeah. At Cafe, we picked a project, a mobile project, which was the first mobile project for Cafe, and it was something that the organization had been waiting for quite a while. But it had a good size, and we had limited dependencies. Spread the success, very important. So, if you have a success, yeah, and your first project should be a success, communicate about it. Yeah. So, yeah, celebrate it, but communicate about it, and then strategically pick your next projects. Every time a little bit more complex, or a little bit in a different area of the organization. So you want to spread it horizontally in the organization, and you also want to increase it in complexity. So at a certain point in time, you want to scale. You want to move from projects, with one team. You want to move to projects with more than one team, or you want to move to projects with suppliers. Distributed agile. Those are not things where you want to start, yeah. Because if you start there, then you may just, have picked too many complexities. So you need to have a strategy in picking your projects. Very important. What I often see with clients is they get in a coach, like myself. You've delivered a couple of projects successfully, because you were able to rally senior management and to get their attention. And then after a couple of projects, I think, yeah, we're there. We can do it. Let's scale, yeah, or let's work with new suppliers, etc. And then often you see that the initial success it will turn into failure, and then the verdict is Agile doesn't work, or Agile only works for small projects, etc., etc., or Agile only works sometimes. That's not the case. But it takes 2 to 3 years before you really can do it by yourself. Don't change Agile before trying it. Very important. But don't come up with the buts before you really tried it in the proper way. Don't change it before you really understand it. Yeah? I was at another conference last week. There was someone who had a very creative solution. The person actually was, I think, was a certified Scrum Master. And the story was like this. We have 89% user stories accepted. So we have a problem. He had a new team. So 89% of user stories were accepted. It was not 100%. So there was a problem. And it was distributed agile. And the person found a good solution, he thought. Let's create templates. So the development team can put their questions into a template and send it to the product owner. Well, there are several flaws there. I mean, if you hear the word template, then it should trigger you. It's not immediately, face-to-face communication. So it's not immediately following the Agile Manifesto. You may have templates for some things, yeah, moving something to production, but having a template, to communicate with your product owner doesn't sound very agile. But the other thing was 89% for a new team is not bad at all. Jeff Sutherland calls, having more than 80% of your forecast accepted, calls that a successful sprint. So basically, there was not a real problem, and definitely this solution was not a real solution. This is Kotter's model of change. So it's interesting to look at it if you're interested in organizational change. Now, one of the things here is that you can't skip stages. Yeah. So it's like CMM, capability maturity model. You can't jump from level 0 to level 4 in 1 week. So here also, you can't jump from the first step to final step. And yeah, some companies can do it faster. Salesforce moved to Agile in 6 months. But Salesforce is a company that only does software. And Salesforce had an approach, full support from top management. And on day 1, they put a Scrum guide on the table of every developer, and they said, read this tonight. From tomorrow morning on, you're going to use Scrum. But that's not something that a lot of companies can do. So, establish a sense of urgency. So there needs to be enough urgency, as explained. Yeah? Either pain or opportunity. Create a guiding coalition. You can't do it alone. Yeah? In a large organization, it can't just be an agile coach. You can get some success there, but without champions, it's going to fail. Yeah, make sure you get a clear shared vision. Also on the framework. Why do you pick a certain framework? Yeah. So how do you want to start? Yeah. Communicate the vision. Communication is essential in transformation, in any type of organizational change. Empower people to act on the vision. Yes, it needs to start with empowerment. Empowerment is part of Agile. So, like Sunil also said this morning, you need to create a safe environment. Yeah? It's not going to work immediately in every area. Yeah? So, the difference between Agile and Waterfall is, in Waterfall, you see your problems when you do your UAT, yeah? 80% of the project. In Agile, you see it in your first iteration. Yeah? So, problems just show up earlier. Those are problems that have nothing to do with Agile. Those are just, organizational impediments. Consolidate and build, yeah? And make sure that the change is fully embedded. So don't stop the drive, don't stop the attention before really the whole organization is able to do Agile. Some takeaways. I see that I'm talking fast as usual. So, yeah, enterprise Agile transformation is major change. Don't underestimate it. Yeah, and you do it for a reason. Yeah, it's not about Agile. It's about delivering shorter time to market. It's about delivering in a more economic way. It's about skipping all that functionality that no one uses. It takes 2 to 3 years. Yeah. It's not just a framework or methodology change. It's a mindset. There's a very different mindset between, being able to escape for 9 months behind your desk or whatever, or having to show up every month and, and being evaluated on working software. It requires learning, yeah, but it also requires a lot of unlearning, yeah. All those thoughts about, oh, I need a template, yeah, or I need a tool. So that needs to go. It requires an approach for organizational change, because yeah, you can coach a team, a software development team on Scrum or Kanban, and that may work in a safe environment. Basically, they started to do Agile practices. So if before 2001, before the Agile Manifesto, if I had to turn around Waterfall, I would put the client team and the supplier team in one room. Now they call that co-location. So some practices already existed. Yeah. So you need to break down the silos, and that's basically what I'm doing at the various clients. So it's it's a long journey. Questions? Any questions? Yeah?
Can you go back to the slides which is regarding the smelling factors, the recognized scopes?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm not saying that, but if you want to review the slides with your Agile coach, then maybe you're doing micromanagement. So if I have a client and they say, well, we want to review your slides. First of all, I don't like slides. I like whiteboards. That's the first thing. And second of all, yeah, if you start with micromanaging, then I think maybe the relationship is not that good or the trust is not that good. So review. If you look at what Deming said, so Deming is the father of quality management, etc., etc. Deming said you can't build in quality at the end. You need to integrate it. So yes, of course, review is good. Pair programming is good, etc., etc. But quality needs to build into your development process. You can't put quality in at the end. Yeah. So if you need a UAT for confidence, then you're not doing Agile properly. Yeah? I mean, if you do Agile properly, you should have working software every sprint. Yeah? Every iteration, let's say like that. So, and if you do it every iteration, and if the business is continuously involved, then there is no need to do a UAT. Yeah? It's just a waste. Yeah? Because, I mean, like I said, you can't build in quality at the end. So, Agile is built, you know, to avoid surprises. So, all these items here, you know.
So here the slice means the work or the like we have a ceremony like sprint review.
Yeah.
Necessary or sprint review.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a, yes, yeah. The term, the sprint review term, I'm not too happy with that term actually. So the demo term is actually worse. You know, let's do a demo. I mean, the demo, you know, it's working software. It's not a demo. You know, it's a working product. So yeah, it's called sprint review. Yeah, and yeah, you sort of you review how the sprint has been going, and actually you're basically checking what is done and what is not done. But to be honest, you know, if you do Agile properly, then you have already done that because you use early feedback. So if you wait with your user stories, if you wait till your last day, you know, whether the product owner is going to say yes, okay, or not okay, then you're not doing Agile properly.
Feedback can come only after review.
Yeah, but in Agile we do review continuously. Yeah? We have continuous involvement of the customer. Yeah? And hopefully they look at other things than slides. Hopefully they look at software. Yeah? So that's my point. Yeah? So,
The thing is about the process. Can we do the Scrum or anything without any process?
sorry?
Can we do the Scrum, follow the Agile methodology without any process?
No, it's not. No, actually, Scrum has a process. So yes, sure, but the thing is that if you look at Scrum, for example, just give you an example. Scrum has a low-level ceremony. Yeah. So if I compare Scrum with PMP or Prince2, and I'm still Prince2 certified, so I'm not using it, but I'm still certified. Then you see, you know, that the Scrum guide is 16 pages. Yeah. If you take the front and the back from the Scrum guide, you've got 14 pages. So if you look at PMP, I forgot the count. I think it's got something like 59 process areas or expertise areas. So yeah, you need process. Yeah, sure, but you know, Scrum shows that a very basic process. Yeah, that is not too prescriptive. Yeah, that is pretty simple on paper, but as said, you know, hard in practice, that's sufficient. Yeah. So you don't need an additional process on top of Scrum or Kanban. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? To get there. So a company that just says, you know, yeah, well, you know, my competition is doing Agile, let's do Agile, has a high chance of failure. So you need to have a vision. Vision, for example, could also be, well, vision strategy could also be, you know, hey, you know, we pick Scrum because Scrum is the most used framework, and that may be a good argument. However, that is just a starting point. So my colleague there was combining Scrum with Kanban because they hit a plateau with Scrum. Personally, I think that is because they use specialists. So, I mean, if you use specialists, then you get bottlenecks. It has nothing to do with Scrum. It has to do with, you know, with what the company or the CTO has selected. I mean, if I use testers and I use developers separately, then I'm going to hit bottlenecks. Yeah. So it's not supposed to be that way. So yeah. So for that reason, you need to have a vision. Yeah. Why you do it? Yeah.
Just want to hear some example if you try to work with the.
Yeah. Well, vision could be based on current pains and basically resolving those pains. So it could be our current time to market for products is you know, in a lot of cases 12 months. That's way too long. So we can't compete. Our value stream is inefficient. So if you look at value stream mapping, for example, then you can you look at the actual activities that add value, and you look at the activities that don't add value. So for example, if project planning takes a day, but it takes 2 months to get your plan approved, then basically those 2 months, most of it, is waste. So one of the views may be, that you want to look at your value stream, that you want to optimize your value stream. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Any other questions? I had a question here from someone that said in the previous session that said, well, how do we deal with support and software development? Yeah, could be more efficient to separate that. Yeah. At the same time, I mean, as long as you make it visible, and as long as you make it visible what goes into support and what goes into new functionality, there is no problem. Yeah. As long as management accepts it, that part of your philosophy or whatever will go into support. Task switching. They switch from project to project, and they get managed by priorities. So that's a model that you want to avoid. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks. I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I hope you learned something from it.